think after last night's debate, I think we all understand very clearly why that is. He will very likely sound exactly on that tape as he did on the stage last night.
Terrible.
And that's embarrassing to the president.
The following day, staged such a huge comeback that he gave those North Carolina remarks. Like, help us understand.
Have you had a cold before?
Of course I've had a cold before.
So you probably, well, come on, Jackie. Let's be very, let's be.
12 days after he returned, though.
But
and
you
he blamed
also
jet lag yesterday.
At the end of the day, you're going to have a lot of these Democrats come out because now they're trying to save their own political skins because they have seen that they cannot hide behind Joe Biden. The media is now not protecting Joe Biden because the media lied to the American people too. They knew what was going on with Joe.
House Republicans sue Merrick Garland, saying, we want those Biden audio tapes. You've not given it to us, and now there will be some consequences, asking the judges, the courts, to come in and rectify this problem between the two branches. Congress issued a subpoena. They said, Garland, you have to give us this stuff. We know other people are already in prison for refusing congressional subpoenas, like Bannon and Navarro. And so why can Garland get away with it? They're asking the courts to step in, order Garland to hand over those audio tapes because Joe Biden apparently is in a way on them, and we can't wait to see what they sound like. So Mike Johnson is going to explain to us why they're going this route. Why are they pursuing this? Anna Paulina Luna also has a plan in place. And then we'll jump into the filing that was submitted in the DC Circuit Court. It's a lawsuit against the DOJ from House Republicans. So it's one branch suing another branch. It's a big deal. And this is Karine coming out explaining that Joe Biden takes naps, probably a lot of naps, doesn't really want to talk about it. Byron will round out this segment explaining this is nothing new here. We know how demented Joe is. So what is the House doing? What are the Republicans up to? We have Mike Johnson, the Speaker, explaining the process during a press briefing with the media in the aftermath of the debate. This was on June 28th. And so we're all trying to figure out how demented is Joe really. Here is what Mike Johnson says about the investigation in the battle with Merrick Garland.
Representative Luna has offered up a resolution to force inherent contempt against the Attorney General. Do you plan to bring that to a vote? And do you think that's the best avenue to get the tapes from Special Counsel for his investigation?
Well, all the House Republicans are in 100% agreement that we have to be aggressive in enforcing the subpoenas of the House. This is about our Article I authority under the Constitution, and we cannot allow the executive branch to defy that. Merrick Garland has refused to turn over something that we are entitled to receive. Because we're pursuing our oversight responsibility under the Constitution, we have to ensure that the transcript that we've been provided of Special Counsel Hur's investigation of President Biden, or his examination and questioning of President Biden, we have to make sure the transcript matches the audio tape. That is a very reasonable thing and a necessary thing for the House and its investigatory authority to do. The Attorney General is not turning it over. He does not have the authority to decide whether that tape is turned over to the House.
Yeah, it's amazing. He gets to decide, well, Bannon goes to prison, Navarro goes to prison for not following a congressional subpoena, but not us. Because of what? Privilege? Because executive privilege, which is exactly what Trump was invoking on behalf of Bannon and Navarro. So what's the difference? There isn't one.
He's the Attorney General. This is a special counsel proceeding. The special counsel, by definition and necessity, works outside the scope of the Department of Justice. He doesn't get to make that call. I called the Attorney General myself, and we had a conversation about this.
What'd he say?
I said, sir, you have to turn this over. He refuses to do so. The White House, as he has made public and said publicly, has commanded him, the President of the United States, has told the Attorney General not to turn over the tape. I think after last night's debate, I think we all understand very clearly why that is. He will very likely sound exactly on that tape as he did on the stage last night.
Terrible.
And that's embarrassing to the president. We're sorry about that.
Yeah.
We're not trying to embarrass the president. We're trying to get down to the facts. So that being said, we're going to be as aggressive as you can. We use every tool in our arsenal to make sure that the evidence that the House is entitled to is turned over. So we are going to court on Monday. We're filing a lawsuit. We are going to go pursue and execute upon that subpoena. And we're going to get the courts, the third branch, to enforce the executive branch to turn over the tapes to the legislative branch. It's an exercise in civics, and we'll be pursuing
So
it.
the court, you're going to go through the court system and not attempt inherent contempt.
Look, I think the easiest way, the best way, is to allow the third branch to resolve this dispute between the executive and the legislative branch. There may be other avenues that we can pursue, and we're looking into all that, but we're not committed to anything yet. What Anna Paulina Luna and I and all House Republicans agree upon is that we've got to use every tool in the toolbox here, so to speak, because this is very, very serious, a serious matter for the country, and we're going to do our duty here.
All right, it is a serious matter for the country, and hopefully they do their duty. duty. But what he was mentioning there was more from Anna Paulina Luna, who was also hinting that they were going to move forward with inherent contempt. So we know that the vote was already completed on actual contempt, but this is a different version. So Anna Paulina Luna dropped this a few days ago, says, breaking news, the vote for inherent contempt against Attorney General Merrick Garland will be brought to the floor this upcoming session week with full support from Speaker Mike Johnson. We're wondering when that's going to be because we got the holiday tomorrow. Is it going to be Friday? This version of inherent contempt will become standard practice for those who seek to undermine Congress as an equal branch of government. It is with great honor and privilege that my colleagues helped us all accomplish this and restore balance to the branches of government. Thank you, Mike Johnson, Representatives Rich McCormick, Mark Alford, Harriet Hageman, who threw out Liz Cheney on her butt, Dan Crenshaw, Max Miller, Russell Fry, Derek Van Orden, Van Klein, and Tim Burchett. Says Garland must answer for his blatant disrespect of Congress and the rule of law. Our founding fathers would not have tolerated the behavior exhibited by Merrick Garland, the DOJ, and the president. This tool was established knowing that one day Congress might need to check the other branches of government and check their power. So Anna Paulina Luna sharing that one. Now, this is what the actual lawsuit looks like. House Republicans suing Merrick Garland. You can see Committee on the Judiciary, United States House of Representatives versus Merrick Garland in the District of Columbia. You know these courts. This is their complaint saying, all right, Merrick, you're in big trouble there, buddy boy. Here's the background. We now bring this from the Judiciary Committee of the United States Congress, House of Representatives. We're bringing this civil action against Merrick Garland, the Attorney General. Why? Because we sent him a duly authorized, issued, and served subpoena. And accordingly, we allege the following. Congress says, all right, look, this dispute is about a frivolous assertion of executive privilege. All right, as part of its oversight into the DOJ and into Joe Biden, we have an impeachment inquiry that's still being processed. The Judiciary Committee issued a subpoena to Merrick Garland. We want records from Robert Hur's investigation of Joe Biden's classified documents. And among other things, we seek a bunch of material. We want interviews with Joe Biden and Mark Zwanitzer, the ghostwriter of his memoir. Now, while the DOJ did give us transcripts of those interviews, and they did release some of the transcripts publicly, Garland has refused to produce the audio recordings of the interviews. Instead, Garland tells Biden, you should exert executive privilege over those recordings. And guess what? Joe Biden did. You know who else invoked executive privilege? Oh yeah, Donald Trump over Bannon and Navarro. And they got charged. They got sent to prison. So hopefully Garland's packing his bags. Now, audio recordings are better evidence than transcripts of what happened during the interviews. And for example, as we know, audio recordings contain verbal and nonverbal context that's missing from a cold written transcript. That verbal and nonverbal context is quite important here because Robert Hur relied on the way that Biden comported himself during the interview and said specifically, he's a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory, and so we can't prosecute him. Ultimately recommended no charges. Now, the audio recordings are the best evidence. The committee needs those recordings. He and White House lawyers have disputed this, and they say we shouldn't have them. But this is Biden attempting to shield himself. Any privilege that conceivably apply to Biden's interview was waived. They have no more privilege. They released a transcript of the whole thing, and they said that was the evidence. And so the better evidence would be the audio. Any privilege that could conceivably apply to special counsel's interview with Zwanitzer was also waived when they produced a transcript of that interview as well. Now, additionally, the heart of the privilege claim, remember the DOJ came back out and they said, oh no, we can't release the audio because if we release the audio, then other people will be less likely to cooperate. They say, well, that's ridiculous. You guys released the transcripts, so it doesn't make any sense. They would work with you if they knew the transcripts would come out, but not the audio. Everybody can read it, that's okay. But if they hear it, then I'm not talking to you. If the potential for disclosure would chill cooperation, it would be the transcript, okay, which the DOJ voluntarily disclosed. So don't give us that. Now, for the reasons and other reasons set forth, Biden's invocation of executive privilege lacks any basis. And so we now ask this court to overrule their privilege and order that Merrick Garland produce the audio of Biden to the committee. Now, we know that we've got jurisdiction over this because you're DC. All this is happening in DC. The parties here are the House of Representatives Judiciary Committee and Merrick Garland. They say, here's the story. Article 1 of the Constitution grants us authority to do our investigations. We've done it for a long time. The Supreme Court has said that we have the power of inquiry and we can enforce that. The judiciary is doing that. We have a lot of power to do all sorts of stuff. We're a standing committee. We've got general oversight responsibilities. House rules say we can do all sorts of stuff. Now, separate from Congress's legislative authority, we also have impeachment authority. So the House is different than Congress. Congress is both bodies. The House has certain powers. The Senate has other powers. And so our committee's jurisdiction also includes impeachment. On September, Kev McCarthy directed the committee to open a formal impeachment inquiry into Joe Biden. We've done that. And we are continuing our oversight. So on November 2nd, if we rewind the clock back to 2022, remember that Joe Biden's personal counsel, his private lawyers, discovered boxes containing classified markings. Interesting, after Trump. The boxes were retrieved by the National Archives. Many items had top secret level codes on them. The National Archives then told the DOJ and the ODNI about the discovery. Then Garland assigned John Lausch to investigate the matter. On December 20th, personal counsel for Joe Biden again discovered other classified documents. Weird. 2 separate locations in the garage of his Wilmington and Delaware home. So 2 other houses. Lausch, the U.S. attorney, was notified of the discovery. Then they found another document. This time was in a notebook located in the basement. So the personal lawyer just keeps finding classified documents all over the place. Did his house get raided by the FBI? Did they go through Hunter Biden's bedroom and take pictures of his bedroom like they did for Barron? No, they didn't. Lausch was notified the next day. The FBI then came. So after the private attorneys probably shredded a bunch of documents, then the FBI came in. Shortly thereafter, then, an attorney from the White House provided the FBI with the notebook. Then Merrick Garland appointed Robert Hur, authorized Hur to continue the Lausch investigation after they cleaned everything up. Then he was embodied with the responsibility to do the investigation. Now, during the Hur investigation, FBI agents found additional classified documents, even more, in Biden's home, within his Senate papers at the University of Delaware. This dude's got documents all over the place. So special counsel did 173 interviews, 147 witnesses. Biden was included, many others, including the ghostwriter. They also listened to audio recordings that Zwanitzer made when he was interviewing Joe for the ghostwriting. Zwanitzer had deleted the audio recordings, which was a destruction of evidence, because the recordings had significant evidentiary value. Did you delete that because you knew they were important? Yes, I did. Oops. They recovered them. Investigators recovered them because he doesn't know how to wipe his hard drives like Hillary's people did. Indeed, the special counsel stated that there is unique evidentiary value in a subject's own voice captured on audio. So glad they recovered those. Now, during a recorded interview with the ghostwriter, the president, who just left the vice president's office, said, I just found all that classified stuff downstairs, quote. Hur said, yeah, that statement was probably in reference to the classified documents. So we know that Joe Biden disclosed classified information to the ghostwriter many times. Specifically, he knew it, he knew he had it, and disclosed it intentionally. Now, Robert Hur's report about the investigation was publicly released. He said, well, based on what we determined here, no criminal charges were warranted because they can't determine that the president was acting willfully. He was just an elderly old man. He reached this determination because he analyzed how Joe Biden presented himself and how he appeared. He said when he testified, he did take into account not just the words from the transcript, but the entire manner in living color in real time and how he presented himself. And he wrote in his report that Joe Biden is a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. Didn't even remember when he was vice president. Forgot when his term began and ended. Said no reasonable juror would ever support a conviction. And I mean, honestly, Robert Hur was completely vindicated on the debate stage. Everybody goes, that's the president? We knew that that was going to be his capability since the beginning because we've been following him for years now. But yeah, Robert Hur confirmed, right? The guy's gone. So President Biden has disputed the interpretation. He says, no, I'm totally competent, just like he's saying today. 3 days before the report was released, Biden's attorney sent a letter to the special counsel attacking the language therein. The letter says his memory wasn't hazy, okay? Don't talk about his memory. Said my memory's fine. And then Joe Biden came out and tried that emergency press conference after the report was released. Remember that? And basically couldn't speak then. Throughout Congress, they say we have been trying to get this material. Our oversight's very important. We are trying to conduct oversight of Jack Smith's investigation, wondering whether the raid of Mar-a-Lago was handled appropriately. On January 13th, the day after Garland appointed the special counsel, there was also some inquiry about Joe Biden's documents. And after the special counsel's report, the committee ramped up its investigation. The committee here, along with 2 other committees, requested more information from Jack Smith and Robert Hur. In fact, we asked for all of this. Robert Hur's interviews, the video and audio, communications with Zwanitzer, the ghostwriter, documents identified as A9 and A10, which are about Ukraine, and a bunch of other materials about the collection of the documents. Now, the DOJ, neither neither offered a time frame, and they're not expected to produce any of the materials. And so what happened? We move forward. On February 27th, the committee issued a subpoena. We sent a subpoena to Garland. We said, hey, okay, listen, enough already. The committee explained the subpoena is required. It specifically required Garland to give us the information, notified him that if you think there's privilege, then write a privilege log. Let us know what's privileged. On March 7th, the DOJ provided its initial response. They said that we're going to supplement our report. Problem is, there's nothing in the report. They produced 6 communications responsive to paragraph 4, and they said you could come look at 2 classified documents in camera, but we're not going to give you the materials. The DOJ gave us a spate of vague reasons. They say, oh, we need more time. We're doing classification review. We're doing confidentiality review. We're doing privacy interest review, blah, blah, blah. And our internal deliberations are all now subject to other privileges and executive branch confidentiality interests. There it is. So by March 9th, the committee still hadn't gotten anything. Our deadline was coming up. On March 12th, a little more than 2 hours before our hearing with Robert Hur, they produced 2 redacted transcripts of Hur's report and the interviews to the committee. So 2 hours before they got the transcripts. Now, before the committee received the transcripts, they'd already been given to reporters. The DOJ did not give any audio recordings, though, so they just turned over the transcripts, but no audio. During the hearing, committee members questioned the special counsel. At the hearing, he said, well, the need to show my work was really strong here, okay? The decision was based on not only the words in the cold record, but also the interview. The committee once again extended the deadline for a complete production of records, so they say, okay, you don't have it now, we'll give you some more time. The DOJ, though, then produced another set of transcripts. They said they made it clear, we are not going to give you the audio, so stop asking for it. The DOJ said that the refusal to give you the audio is because it's a political request and it's cumulative. We already gave you the transcripts, we don't have to give you both. They said also, if we give you the audio, voluntary witness cooperation is going to be tarnished, and that the president had decided not to exert executive privilege over the report or the transcript, but we're not going to give you the audio. On April 15th, the Oversight Committee made one final attempt. We sent the subpoena a letter saying, look, here's why we asked for this. The DOJ, don't tell us you've got privilege, okay? You already waived that when you released the transcripts. The audio is important. Vocal tone, pace, inflections, verbal nuances, idiosyncrasies. We need to know all about it. Now, the day of the deadline, the DOJ responded on Merrick Garland's behalf. They wrote a letter back saying, we're not giving you your records. Stop bothering us. In short, the DOJ quibbled with Congress. Why do you even need this? We've already given you sufficient know why. We've already told you enough so you know why the special counsel made the decision. So then they closed the investigation. They refused to produce the audio. And even though the DOJ had already decided not to exert executive privilege over the transcripts, it still was not going to give us the audio. The DOJ relied on the tone. The special counsel relied on the inflections. He relied on the idiosyncrasies. And so we need that too. And executive privilege is not appropriate. We had a public business meeting and we considered whether to hold Merrick Garland in contempt. As of the early morning on May 16th, Attorney General Garland had not asserted any privilege. However, less than 2 hours before the meeting, the committee got a letter. So they were going to vote on holding Garland in contempt. The DOJ said that morning that Biden was invoking executive privilege. Weird, because Bannon's in prison for that. DOJ also included a copy of the Attorney General's letter the previous day. Among Attorney General's reasons for privilege, Garland is now saying, yes, invoke it, and Joe Biden did. So then we asked, well, okay, you're invoking privilege, but your privilege has been waived because you already released the transcript, so you have no privilege. So where is the audio? We reject your privilege claim, right? Just like Liz Cheney did to Trump's claim. Okay, committee just did exactly what the J6 committee did. Your privilege is rejected. Give us the materials. Show up and testify. The committee's report noted that Biden had waived his privilege, and while the department could have taken steps to protect the confidentiality of the transcripts, it didn't. The committee found the privilege claim was not timely and invalid, and Garland didn't assert any of it. So finally, even if the privilege claim had been timely and valid, it had been overcome because the audio recordings were necessary, and the DOJ did it too. And so the House ultimately found him in contempt of Congress. They voted 216 to 207. The full House, not Liz Cheney's fake committee that was illegally constituted. When it voted, the House had the committee's report, and we reviewed all of the information inside. On June 14th, the DOJ informed Mike Johnson, we're not gonna actually bring this. So even though Congress has charged Merrick Garland with contempt, the DOJ is not gonna enforce it. They informed the House that we're not gonna prosecute ourselves, okay? We're only gonna prosecute Trumpers. We're only prosecuting Bannon and Navarro and the J6ers, not when we violate a congressional congressional subpoena. Now, Speaker Johnson certified the committee's report to Matthew Graves. And on June 26, Attorney General Garland, in the last-ditch attempt to find a way to resolve this before they filed the complaint. However, during their conversation, Garland indicated the matter was out of his hands. I can't do anything, okay? Garland has received a direct order from President Biden. Don't release the audio. Merrick Garland says Joe Biden does not want that audio out. We know why. When the Speaker's office reached out to the White House to find a solution, the White House said, no, not going anywhere. So the same day, the Bipartisan Legal Advisory Group, which is authorized by the House to speak on litigation, said we should initiate this suit. And so we're now doing that. We need this audio. We don't need the cold transcript. Even Robert Hur's reports and conclusions hinged on the audio. He said that himself. And an audio recording will include all the words, not the edited transcript where they're taking out all the marbles in Joe Biden's mouth. The audio recordings are critical so that we know what to do. We're Congress. It's going to shed light on whether the president willfully retain the classified documents, which bears directly on our impeachment inquiry. And so a transcript is not a carbon copy of an oral interview, and therefore it's undeniably inferior evidence. So a transcript is bad. We need tone, and a transcript's just not going to do it. The DOJ even acknowledges this. They say audio recordings have distinct features. That's why we record the interviews. Transcripts can't capture emphasis and a lot of things. There's also paralinguistic cues. Things like all of those are in there. Heightened volume, faster pacing, more fluent speech. Is it more narrative? Are you hemming and hawing? Do you sound nervous? Relying solely on transcripts is not good enough. They can't capture the nonverbal cues. For example, special counsel noted that Zwanitzer's interviews with Biden, at times he would struggle or he would strain at times. So you can't communicate that in a transcript. Transcripts fail to capture the nuance. And there might also be discrepancies, okay? These are not hypothetical. Despite DOJ's assertions that it has produced unedited transcripts, it has admitted that they are edited. The interview transcripts, is what they said, are accurate transcriptions of the words of the interview contained in the audio recording, except for minor instances such as the use of filler words. So they deleted the ums or the uhs when speaking that are not always reflected on the transcripts, or when words may have been repeated when spoken, like I, and no, but sometimes was only listed a single time in the transcript. So how many times did he say those things? Who knows? DOJ has stated that the transcripts here sometimes indicate that sometimes the audio recording words are indiscernible. What are the words? Is Joe Biden saying Truman International Depressor? The hell did you just say? But the Biden administration has claimed before that spoken words were indiscernible when they were not. For example, in April, Biden gave a speech, which was recorded, where he can be seen and heard reading a teleprompter, and he was instructing to pause during the speech. He says, imagine what we could do next. 4 more years. Pause. One example showing that transcripts don't actually capture all the words actually spoken, including President Biden's, and other examples abound. So the interviews are absolutely relevant. We're investigating criminal charges against Joe, and to determine whether criminal charges should be brought, we should know the mental state of the president and whether there was willfulness. Biden himself, when he was being interviewed, Robert Hur said he would present himself as a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with poor memory. And that led to the ultimate conclusion. So we need to hear that. They noted that he was also unable to remember a bunch of stuff during the interview, that his memory appeared hazy. These were examples of significant limitations of Biden's brain. He couldn't even recognize the documents that they recovered. And the special counsel concluded that Biden's staff unwittingly took an envelope out and moved it. And so Biden didn't have any idea. The staff did it, so couldn't charge him. And he's got a very sympathetic demeanor, so it's hard to determine his criminal intent. Now, as these examples show, the audio recording will give us a much more complete picture about how bad the transcripts are. The verbal nuances were used by the special counsel to reach his conclusion, and so we need to do the same. Now, not everyone even agrees with the special counsel. A White House lawyer rebuts them too. And so now, since there's a bunch of stuff that's open to interpretation, the White House disagrees with Robert Hur, we need to get to the bottom of it. They say one thing happened over here, special counsel says another thing happened here. And now there's a different special counsel that's prosecuting Trump. And the cold transcript is not good enough. So the committee is doing our oversight. And in order to fairly do our analysis, we need to have a full understanding of what took place. They're now talking about the ghostwriter a bunch. And so once we get this, it will then inform our decisions. The committee might consider reauthorizing, for example, an independent statute to determine what to do about these problematic special counsels. What type of legislative reforms are appropriate? And we also might impeach Joe Biden. which I really hope they don't, because he's the best thing that the Republicans have right now, other than Trump. The special counsel's report indicates that at least 2 classified documents were retained by Joe. It included a handwritten note that said, "Get a copy of this conversation from my records, please." Biden had tons of classified information about the time from Ukraine when old Hunter sat on the board. The committee needs to know if Biden took classified information to benefit his family, probably, and the audio recordings will help shed light on that. We still need to know whether he had strong motivations to take this classified material so he could write his book. He got $8 million for that book. Listening to the recordings will help us make that determination. And so executive privilege and the claim of exerting it are totally unavailable. The transcripts have already been released. They sent it to the news media. So there's nothing now left to privilege. And executive privilege was waived before. It was not even invoked timely. We sent in a bunch of deadlines. They didn't comply with it. And so the information sought by the committee does not implicate any presidential decision making. It doesn't involve communications. It doesn't involve national security. There's no presidential advisors. This is a criminal investigation. So executive privilege doesn't apply. The committee seeks information related to this, and the Attorney General not giving it to us is a problem. They've already released the transcripts. There is not going to be a chilling effect to any of this, and so the impact has been grossly overstated. So the committee now has a constitutional obligation to get these records out. We've already made reasonable accommodations. There's no lawful basis for Garland to preclude us from having this, and so we now ask you, the D.C. Circuit Court, to grant the following relief. Declare that Garland's refusal to produce the audio lacks any legal justification, and order Garland to produce the audio of Biden and Mark Zwanitzer to the committee. Retain jurisdiction over this and grant further relief as deemed proper, respectfully submitted by attorneys, a whole slew of them, for House Republicans, U.S. House of Representatives. A nice filing there in the D.C. Circuit Court by the Judiciary Committee saying, Garland, you must be ordered to give us the materials. And they're launching other possibilities as well. As we saw from Representative Luna, this is just one avenue of attack in order to get these materials. We'll, of course, see what Garland says and the DOJ says in response. But now let's take a look at why people are so involved in trying to get the audio. It's because our president is long gone. This clip came over from our friend Carly Bonney. She posted this one. Karine came out for another brutal interview session, and somebody asked her about the president's nap time, because apparently he takes a bunch of those so that he can fail during presidential debates. So here is some concern from the press saying, you know, we need some indicators here that the president is competent. Can you help us, Karine, please?
The record that he's been able to lay on behalf of the American people.
Is there anything, Karine, that would change his mind?
Look, I cannot lay out something that would change the president's mind. He has been very clear, and he's going to continue to build on the unprecedented record that he's been able to lay out for the American people. That's his focus right now.
What does the president do outside the hours of 10 a.m. and 4 p.m.?
Well, you heard him speak to supporters yesterday outside of 4 p.m. You saw the president land in North Carolina in the middle of the night at 2 o'clock. What was he doing? He was greeting supporters, hundreds of supporters that showed up to cheer him on after the debate. You saw him speaking at 9 o'clock at night in New York in front of supporters. So he's been pretty much out there after the hours of 4 p.m. and before 10 a.m. for sure. And so that has been something he has consistently done over the past couple of days for sure, for certain.
Have an afternoon nap every day.
Let me be very clear about this. This is a president that wakes up every morning and puts the American people first. That's what he does. He does that every single day. That is his focus. I am not going to speak to sources out there, unnamed sources out there. That's not what I'm going to speak to. I'm going to speak to what I know, what this president does, and how he is committed to the work
Does he
of the
take
president,
a nap?
of the commander-in-chief.
Every day.
And his record clearly lays that out and speaks to it. And that's what he's going to continue to do. The American people first and delivering for them.
Can you also clarify Sungmin's question?
Sure.
I mean, how is it that the president was still tired 12 days after returning from Europe, had a cold, but then went to the Waffle House, and then the following day staged such a huge comeback that he gave those North Carolina remarks? Like, help us understand.
Have you had a cold before?
Of course I've had a cold
Okay,
before.
so
but
you probably, well, come on, Jackie. Let's be very, let's be.
12 days after he returned, though.
But
and
you
he
also,
blamed jet lag yesterday.
Hold on a second. There's a cold, there's a jet lag. You combine that. He continues to work for the American people day in and day out around the clock. Things happen. And the cold thing is something that you all pointed out during his his debate. We didn't even point that out. You all pointed out when you heard his voice being hoarse.
You said he
because
had a
he
cold.
knew he had to push through.
So that's why we said it
He knew he
too.
has to power through. That's what presidents do. If you care about this country and you don't care about yourself, you care about the American people, you care about delivering for this country, you care about how you're going to continue to work every day in and day out, you push through. We've all do that.
Because all these Democrats
We've
who are
all
saying
do
they want
that.
to see him,
But
it speaks to that.
But we didn't share that information ahead of time. You all asked what was going on, and then we shared that information. We didn't use that before the debate. You all asked, hey, is he under the weather? And we confirmed that he was under the weather. He pushed through. That's what this president does. He is going to continue to fight for the American people. So he pushed through it. I think anybody who does that, not just the president, should be commended. And he also said, you heard him say this on Friday, when you get knocked down, you get back up. That's what you saw.
Is there any discussion that if the president were to suspend his campaign, that he would also resign? Are there any discussions about
absolutely
the vice
not.
president assuming his duties?
Absolutely not. Go ahead, Kelly.
Nope. So they're just going to burn him out because they can't admit that he's long gone. So Joe Biden had a cold. He had jet lag. He's walking into Waffle House, coughing, shaking hands all over the place. Didn't even have a mask on. So the whole thing obviously is fictional. The president is just gone. That's what the answer is. Byron Donalds knows the truth. Here's what he said when he was asked about this. He posted this on X. Said, the media lied to you about Biden's condition for years. They knew the truth, but they wouldn't report it. Now you've seen Biden for yourself and they can't cover him up anymore. Democrats may try to distance themselves, but the reality is their shared agenda, all of them, every single one of them, no matter who they swap in, whether it's Biden or Kamala or Whitmer or Newsom or whatever, doesn't matter. They're all part of the problem. Here's Byron explaining.
Well, it really doesn't matter what they say. Joe Biden's going to make this decision, which means Jill Biden's going to make this decision along with Hunter, and they're going to go from there. At the end of the day, you're going to have a lot of these Democrats come out because now they're trying to save their own political skins because they have seen that they cannot hide behind Joe Biden. The media is now not protecting Joe Biden because the media lied to the American people too. They knew what was going on with Joe. They didn't want to report it, but now they have to because everybody has seen what a tragic shape that he is in. So these Democrats are going to come out more and more, one by one, but it won't matter at the end of the day because Joe Biden has to decide what he's going to do. This family, which has been masterful at grifting on behalf of the American government for decades now, I don't know what they're going to decide. We'll see. But like I said, him, Kamala Harris, doesn't matter. They both need to be defeated this November.
And they will be, baby. And the question is, will these audio tapes come out? The White House is going to fight very hard to prevent that from happening. But if somebody approved them coming out, right? If Joe Biden approved them coming out, wouldn't that put to bed all of the concerns? Like, he's got a big problem here. Everyone says he can't talk, he's incompetent, he's like a demented elderly old man who shouldn't be charged with crimes. If the audio tapes were very supportive of Joe, he should just release them. No, they're great. Just release them. They're great. You're going to hear him. He's handling himself, right? And they could say, we have no motive. We didn't even intend to show you those, but okay, we'll release them just to show. He's competent. He's fine. He's totally capable. They won't because he's gone. So the question is, what's happening behind the scenes? And is Garland going to ride this one in? Will the courts take it away from him and say, turn over those audio tapes? And will that happen before the election? That's a big question because boy, oh boy, could you imagine those tapes coming out? They really wanted to make Joe go away. They'd find some way to get those tapes leaked or out, and that would be the end of it. So we'll, of course, be here continuing to cover this, my friends. We'll see what the DOJ says. We'll see what Republicans do as they continue to hold the DOJ accountable for their subpoenas and for their contempt. We have two people who are sitting away in prison right now because they violated a subpoena from Congress. When is Merrick Garland going to join them? No one's above the law. We'll see if that happens. Thank you so much for joining us as we do. We really appreciate it, you subscribing to our channel. We love it when you invite a friend or family member to come over here and join us so that they can see the madness that's happening in our country around here. We have another great video that we're going to link back up. It's from our first segment about Alvin Bragg and Missouri suing the state of New York. So if you missed that, we'll cue that one up for you next. And of course, we'll look forward to seeing you over there and back here on the next one.